Tuesday, June 28th, 2017, business meeting of the Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. Please stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we'll have the reading of the mission statement.
Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Thanks, Aaron. And the vision statement.
Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for life of choice, purpose, and service.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
You're more than welcome.
And now we'll move to celebrations and reflections.
All right, this evening we've asked Dave Whoopi to be here representing the Boys and Girls Club just to give us a little bit of a rundown of our end of the year numbers and the involvement with Boys and Girls Club. So Mr. Whoopi, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
There's way more. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dave.
Hello.
One of the nice parts about my job is I get invited to stuff like this, and a lot of people don't like public speaking, but when I get to come and talk about what I do all day long, every day, it's it's actually very enjoyable for me. So thank you very much for letting me come to do this. Before I dive into a summary or a update on how things are going at the Boys and Girls Clubs at Fairview, I wanted to mention really quickly, and I promise you I do this in a positive way, not a negative way, but Richmond Community Schools has decided to handle their suspended students on their own, and that's actually kind of a trend that's been going around the whole county. And we've had a positive alternatives program, some of you I'm sure are familiar with, for years. And what I was really wanting to bring up about that was while we are not serving suspended students anymore, we will continue to serve expelled students. And that doesn't just go for Richmond. That's any student in Wayne County. So we'll keep doing that, and we're also in the midst of expanding that program through the Wayne County Probation Department. So we're really excited about the future of that, and just wanted to make sure that we had mentioned that. So I gave you some information about Fairview, and I did want to say I had to look this up because I think it makes me feel a little bit old, but this is actually the 7th year there's been a club at Fairview. For some reason I was thinking it was 5, but I went back and counted and checked, and this is actually, we just completed our 7th year. And we don't have all the statistics going back that far on the forms I gave you tonight, but the neat thing about that is when you look at this form that I gave you, the first page, you can see that every year that we've been open, we continue to serve more and more students, and this year at 188 averaging every day is just unprecedented. It is not as many as Jeffers, but it's also probably half the square footage. I don't have those statistics in front of me, but it's doing really, really well. In fact, if anything, we're maybe just a touch too many kids for the space we have. So, and that's true about the whole organization, which I'll mention again at the end. But we had to put in a membership freeze, not just at Fairview, but throughout our entire organization. And that's not a great thing to turn away kids, but at the same time, it means we must be doing something right. So we're very happy about that. And Fairview is one of the main reasons why, organization-wide, we have grown as much as we have. We actually serve close to 700 kids a day on a kind of day-to-day school year basis. If you take a look at just the month-to-month breakdown of the last school year, I mean, there's some months that are far in excess of 188 a day, and you know, that January at 209 is really over the top. So we're very excited about that, and then down at the bottom of that page, you can see that I have a statistic, attended the Boys and Girls Clubs at Fairview 52 times or more, and there were over 250 kids. The reason why I can't give you an exact number is we calculate that based on calendar year, not school year, and it's really complicated to swap that out. But what I wanted to tell you about that is the Boys and Girls Clubs of America did a study a number of years ago about how our kinds of programs can impact the lives of kids that, or members that come of all ages. And if you come at least one time a week, averaging a year, or 52 times in a year, these are the kinds of things that are more likely to happen for any given member. There's a decreased number of times that they will skip school, increased academic confidence, increased school effort, higher levels of community service involvement, increased levels of integrity, decreased levels of shyness, decreased levels of aggression, and increased levels of future connectedness. That's with the community or wherever your organization is. And so we have 250 kids that reach that goal. And in fact, it might be as many as 275. As I say, that's a hard one to calculate for a school year. And so that's obviously the kind of thing that I think not only we want to do, but I'm sure that's a pleasing statistic to think about for a school board. And we're really proud of the fact that we can do that for so many different kids. So the next thing is we do a member survey, and this is a national, something that the Boys and Girls Clubs of America requires us to do. And this is just a small sampling of some of the results of our surveys, and this is also just Fairview. This isn't all of our organization. And it's broken down into tons of categories and then some big groups. And the first page is what's just referred to as the overall club experience. And if you take all of the things that are surveyed and combine them, that's the very first one, which is the overall experience. And as you can see, at Fairview, they divide them up into three groups: room to grow, doing fine, and doing great. And those are, thirds. And really what we're shooting for is doing great, obviously. And if you look at the under Fairview, it's 47% compared with the national average of 37%. And I don't want to get into Boys and Girls Clubs of America stuff, but that has now become a new national goal that is basically a strategic plan for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, is to raise that number actually to 75%, which is a really lofty goal. But what's nice is that we're already at Fairview 10% above the national average. So I couldn't be more proud of that. That is also the highest of all of our clubs, too. And these by the way, these are computer generated statistics that kids actually, sit down and go through about a 45-minute survey. The next one I wanted to point out is sense of belonging, which is the second one, where in the doing great category, it's 50% versus the national average at 41. And then another one I really am very proud of is it's about 4 or 5 down, physical safety, which is specifically referring to things like bullying, and do the kids feel like this is a good place to be, and do they feel safe? And under doing great, it's 71% versus 58% nationally, and that's something to feel really, really good about, particularly if you have a neighborhood where maybe that's not true all around, when you're not in the school. So that's a really good one, and that has gone up steadily over the years. The other one I wanted to point out is actually the top of the second page, and I cut that off at the wrong spot. But that's staff expectations, which is sort of what do we instill in these kids that we expect them to get out of this experience at the club. And there you can see the Fairview percentage is 81%, which is just sky high. And that means that the kids that come there realize they're expected to do really well, they're expected to behave, they're expected to do well in school, and all those other really positive things. So for me, those are really great highlights. I went ahead and included, excuse me, lots of other things, but those were the big ones. Another broad category is the next page, which is good character and citizenship. That is, by the way, we divide up all of our programming into 3 categories that we call the 3 priority outcomes. They are good character and citizenship, healthy lifestyles, and academic success. Sorry, that's probably the first one I should have mentioned. But because you guys know lots about academic success, I thought I would just focus on good character and citizenship today. And that we have things that, group clubs, as we call them, where they elect officers and they do community service projects and all sorts of things like that. And the first one is teen volunteering. By the way, there's a decent population of teens at Fairview too. And I really like the fact that if you look at the top two groups of, do you volunteer on an average of once every other week or once a week, and you combine those, you have 21% and 16, and that's 37% versus a national average of 29. So we have lots of teenagers in that neighborhood who are learning firsthand about volunteering and giving back to their community. And obviously that's a really good thing. The other one on that page I wanted to highlight are the conflict resolution skills, which is the third one down. Obviously, we want kids to learn how to avoid physical conflict or just verbal conflict for that matter. And again, all those statistics are far better than the national averages. So those were the two I wanted to point out that we do a really good job with at Fairview. So a few other things about the club that I wanted to make sure you knew about. We have, in the middle of this year, unfortunately, the unit director that was there was John York, who had been with our organization for a long time. He had grown up at the club. And he got a different position in Bloomington and moved away. And at first, that was a big worry for me because you don't want to change those kinds of positions too much, and particularly at a club that's growing as much as that is, and there's so many responsibilities. So there is a young woman who had worked for the club for 10 years. Her name is Mikkel McDaniel. She actually worked at Fairview. She grew up in the Fairview neighborhood. She went to school there, but she worked there a couple of years, and then she was our unit director in Hagerstown. Well, when John moved, I moved her back in just in an interim position. And she was a lot less experienced than John, and I wasn't sure how well she'd do because the club at Hagerstown is probably half the size, and it's just a whole different kind of place. And I am very happy to report she's just done outstanding. And it was, I think, probably less than a month before I realized, no, she needs to stay here. She didn't just take over for John, she actually improved the club. I couldn't be happier with the way she's running things. We did things like, with that many kids, it's hard to keep them in the places they're supposed to be and out of the places they're not supposed to be. And she improved that a great deal. And we everything about it, the morale of the staff, and it was just really good. And that's not any kind of bad reflection on John. It's just something that she was more than ready to move up. And I look forward to her not just staying in the fall, but for quite a while. I think she'll be there. The other thing I wanted to talk about, several years ago we added school teachers that work there after school as one-on-one tutors, where they're actually scheduled to work with individual students. And this is through our 21st Century Community Learning Center grant that we're able to do that kind of thing. And we've done it at all of our clubs for a number of years, but we got an expansion of that last year, and so we actually added a third tutor, and Amy Vance, who's a teacher at Fairview, started doing that, and it's just really great that basically any kid that needs one-on-one attention after school is able to do that. And it's particularly good at this club since, in Amy's case especially, she's a teacher there. She already knows most of these kids, and she can immediately tie into what they're doing in school, and we're really happy about that. The other good thing, which probably even Amy doesn't know, is that the funding that allowed us to expand was temporary, but we've just recently found out we're going to be able to continue that this year too. So that's another really good development. The last couple of things I wanted to mention are on Fridays we have teen nights there, which it's unheard of in elementary schools to have big enough teen populations to do that, and we stay open extra, and we average somewhere between 30 and 50 teens there. That's actually more than we get at Jeffers, which is a really exciting thing. We have teens from all of our clubs kind of go to wherever the teen night is that particular night, but Fairview is the most popular, and one of the things we added a few years ago, or I think 2 years ago, was that we've gotten sponsors to give us food for those nights, and obviously that's a big attraction. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned Buffalo Wild Wings because they give us food for every one of our clubs once a month, and they don't charge us a dime for it, and it's a bunch, like there's leftovers. So that's a really neat thing, and so that's, the B-dubs night is the one when you really want to go to Fairview.
So if we want to stop in and visit on those.
You will get all that you want. We're happy to share. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that we have a program at the Boys and Girls Club that's one of my favorites, and it's called Youth of the Year. And it's only available to kids 14 and over, and they have to have been a club member for 2 years or more. And then they compete. They have to write essays, and then they have to get recommendation letters from teachers and other people that they've worked with, and it's a long process. And this year, we had our first former student from Fairview as our Youth of the Year, who's Jessica Mills. And that was really neat for me, because when I was at Fairview a number of years ago, she was my mentee, and it's neat to see her all grown up now. And in fact, when she goes on to the state Youth of the Year competition, she was a finalist this year, which means she was in the top 5 in the state, and that's out of 35 clubs. So that was really neat to see her do that. And we have a fundraising dinner every fall that we call Smart Futures, and she will get up and give her speech there. So she was really a great performer at the state competition. It was neat because it was probably the best version of her speech she had ever given, and I was very nervous before that, and it was actually better than any practice run we'd ever had, so that always catches you by surprise. There is another article at the end, and I'm not going to highlight that or read about it, but I wanted you to have a copy, and that's because we were asked by our regional office, which is in Chicago, we've had unprecedented attendance increases over the last 4 school years. We've gone from in the 400s to in the 600s. It's a 44% increase. And because of that, they asked me to basically write an article explaining how we were able to do that. And while that involves a lot more than just Fairview was a big part of it, and I thought it would be something you might want to take a look at. So I invite you to read that, and I'm very proud of that, because that's kind of my main focus. Is not just getting more kids there, but really having quality programs, and I think that you don't increase attendance without doing something right. So hopefully you'll find that beneficial to take a look at. But that's all from me, unless anybody has any questions.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. 2 of my grandchildren attend the Fairview program, and it started out that the other kids were bragging about how awesome the program was. So my grandson begged me to let him go. And when I picked him up, he's never ready to go. There's always something so great, they're doing this, and Grandma, you just gotta wait, because it's such an awesome program. And I wanted to tell you, thank you for making the education part just as important to him, and to all of them, because the kids, when I see them there, they are not ready to leave. They want to stay there and do see whatever's going to happen next.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that might be my favorite thing, is when you go and find a child who's time to go, and then they get very depressed, or they just try to hide or whatever. That's about as good a thing as we can have happen.
You have to go get them.
Right.
Yeah, but thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Well, and David, I just want to say I'm so glad we have a place for our kids to go that's safe, with good role models, and a place they feel secure and can still learn and be happy. So I think it's a great program.
Well, thank you very much. We love being there. It's just an outstanding partnership, and it's in a place where we need it, and it's worked well, and it just really couldn't be much better.
Well, and more of our kids really, really need that now. So.
That's exactly right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, now it's time for public commentary. Then we'll move to consent items.
Okay, our consent items this evening include 4.01, the approval of minutes, 4.02, our human resources, including the addendum that was at your desk tonight, 4.03, accounts payable, and then 4.04, our monthly financial report.
Okay, do I have a motion that we approve the consent items? Aaron makes a motion.
I move to approve the consent items with the addendum as presented.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Suzanne seconds it. Any comments or discussion?
In the docket, I noticed that we've purchased 2 more buses. And I bring that up because, one, busing and our bus schedule replacement and all that's something that's been a discussion that we've had to address and that we need to address, and we have problems coming up. But the other part of that I wanted to bring up and point out is kind of goes hands in hands also with the policies that we're going through. The small purchase and the purchase policies are actually part of what's being recommended, part of that to be deleted and replaced and that kind of stuff. And I said this, I'm pretty sure I said this last year as well. We used to see the bid packets come through on buses, and we used to talk about different options and maintenance and lease this or do that, and that's gone away from us over the years. And there's a small piece in the statute that says that if it's on a state approved list, then they don't have to, I'm assuming they don't have to put them out for bids. I'm not exactly sure exactly how that works, but I mentioned that I wish that we would have, last year I said this, I said I wish we'd have more, give us a heads up that you're doing this and let us kind of know that this $500,000 expenditure is coming, because the statute allows that to bypass the bid process from our perspective, where it doesn't require to go out for bids, doesn't require notification, doesn't require us to agree and all that kind of stuff. Now, how I'm tying that into the policies, I've thought a lot about, and this is just a good example, I've thought a lot about the discussion that we had last board meeting about policy, about whether something should be in or shouldn't be in, and I'm a little concerned as we move forward in some of these policies that I understand the state statute, but when we take a look at what the law is, sometimes the state is the minimum requirement. So, for example, in this, the requirement is we don't have to be informed that we're buying buses. So we don't have to be informed of the process that we're going through to buy buses. We don't have to be informed and discuss what type of buses we're buying or what kind of options we're buying or any of that. Because we used to talk about maintenance used to be part of that. There used to be a bunch of things that were part of that. Now, and I'm not here to argue that point, but what I'm saying is as we're looking at these board policies, I just don't want to get hung up on passing board policies that meet state minimum, because sometimes I think we may want more as a board. And that's where I'm trying to reconcile the difference between the conversation that we had with Ron and discussion with Julie Slavens last week about, what the requirement is, what the requirement isn't. I think from a district, we may want more than what the state offers as a minimum. I think as a district, we may want some of that information there to make it easily searchable for the constituents, whether those are parents or teachers or administrators or students or whoever. So I guess I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind, because again, searching state statute to me is not easy. Even when I read and Google a state statute and bring it up, even interpreting it then
It's confusing.
is confusing. And I just want to reiterate that point, because I also feel the more minimum that we go on our policies, then the more interpretation difference that we lead to have. And I think sometimes on some of these policies, if our intent is to have this happen, now whatever this is, a good example is some of the transportation policies that we went through are recommended to be slashed as well. Some of these, in order for us to ensure that the intent is right, we may need to align and see what the administrative guidelines are. And we've been told over and over again that that's not our responsibility. So I'm just trying to reconcile everything, because sometimes if I have a 3-sentence board policy and I have a 10-page interpretation from the administrator on how we those could be as different as night and day. So that's just a soapbox speech, not really anything to respond to, but just keep that in mind as we move forward.
I have a question. To go off what he's saying, I guess I might be a little confused, but if we don't know how much we're bidding on something, but yet and still we're expected to vote on it and approve it, why should we have to vote and approve something? We don't have no clue what's going on about it.
You mean like the buses?
Well, that's part of the statute that said if it's on
Yeah.
the Indiana bid list, then
Correct.
You don't?
It's within a particular dollar figure and meets the standards reset
actually,
for buses.
dollar figure doesn't go with it. Those, if it's on that state list, it
It's
doesn't
on the
make a
list.
difference.
Right.
You know, we spent $500,000 in buses, and
Well, I'm worried about the year that we has to do.
It starts
well,
next year.
I mean, so that's a good question.
Well, so
and-
we approve something based off of the fact that we don't have to know about it, but yet and still we have to approve it.
No, we didn't.
No, see, maybe I'm lost.
Welcome to education.
Well,
We
I'm
didn't
just
approve it because the state statute says that.
And it's part of the bus replacement plan.
We have to approve all contracts and pay dockets and that kind of stuff.
I get that, but if we don't get to see it,
Mr. Cross, do you have anything you'd like to add to
I
this
assume it's on
discussion?
the docket, that's why Jeff brought it up.
Right, it is.
Yes.
So that's what you're approving.
Is the docket.
You don't see every invoice that's on your pay docket, I don't think. That's
No.
gonna be pretty time consuming.
but I no, and I wouldn't want to do that. I just think that if we're responsible for more than, if a bus costs $100,000 or $50,000, I don't know how much it
You
costs.
gotta understand the process, that the state does that vetting for you. And that is what happens, so that there is this alternative. What we do at the county when we're buying sheriff's vehicles or whatever, is we'll get the number from the state and then we'll try to give our locals a chance to match it. And we found that very often they can. Unfortunately, we no longer have a local school bus provider, and so that limits the ability to use that approach. So short of bidding them out, seeing what the numbers come in from the few vendors that remain, and then going to the state and comparing, and then there's nothing wrong with doing that as a sanity check, but I think you're going to find the state's already done it for you and vetted those vendors.
Okay.
I do think sometimes on state bids, sometimes there are selected vendors, and many oftentimes you can find something lower, so
Well, we found, like I say, and that's a fairly significant cost item, a sheriff's vehicle with the package that's added, and that's usually required through the state purchasing service, but the basic chassis and vehicle, we found our local vendors have been very, very competitive, as well as the fact that in the serviceability of the vehicle, there seems to be more commitment from the locals than there might be at the state.
And if I had known this was going to be a question, I could have a better answer prepared for you.
Oh, no,
but
I didn't.
I didn't know Jeff was going to bring this up.
Jeff just made me have that question
Yeah,
and
so,
made me
but
think of
the
that.
other part of this is the reason why we have to continue to do, it has to do with, if we do not keep our level where it is, it can impact our tax rate that is collectible as well.
Okay.
And so there are the other ramifications that go along with that, as has been mentioned with the upcoming year where we've got several buses that we're gonna have to replace all at one time, and what does that look like? We still are working through that plan to see what that's gonna look like.
Okay.
Well, and it's not like we're not totally aware that it's going to happen because we have a school bus replacement list and a schedule. But we don't always conform to that as well. So, and, you know, I wanted to have the discussion face to face. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
You know, having a discussion email doesn't work for me because I don't get responses. So when I have these type of questions, they will be in a board setting.
Thank you. That was good for me. Thank you. I needed that. Thank you.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. Any other comments or discussion?
Yeah, it's just I'm struggling here with the contract recalculation as part of human resources.
Okay.
Just for the fact that if we do this, I would like to see us look more into the rest of the staff as well. Also, I was in this situation several years ago. I was hired in at the wrong scale. I approached the current superintendent at that point and I was told that he wouldn't even entertain the idea of looking at it. So that's where I'm kind of struggling with this whole
Okay.
recalculation
And I can
here.
speak to this. I can't speak to that at all. What I can tell you is that this came as we've reviewed, trying to make sure that everyone's contract is figured the same way with the same experience has counted towards their contract when they originally come into the corporation. And this was the only one out of everyone that is in this classification who did not get their years of experience. The only one. Every other case, every other Dixie sent an email asking to look at all those, and I responded to the entire board with that information. Right. And we've reviewed every other situation, and this was the only one in this spot.
And it was not brought up at the time of the signing of the contract?
Was before his
That was
time.
before I got here.
Well, okay. Then,
It was brought up at that time, and I'm not going to go into speculation of what that response back and forth was because I've only heard one side of it. All I know is it's not correct, and it needs to be correct, and it needs to be at the same level so it is consistent with everyone else.
I thought that was in the next section, so I actually have a comment on that as well.
I would have liked to have seen this
I
discussed further before brought up for vote.
Did you have?
Well, I didn't want to. As you know, I sent you an email after I thought about, after I read it. I hate having to talk about these type of issues out in the public because it makes it unfair to the employee. I think it makes it unfair to us because I think it gives whoever the employee would be, it's got to make them feel bad in a way if it's not approved, and I think it kind of forces us in a way to approve it because we're face to face and we're sitting at a meeting. I had also mentioned I wish we had an opportunity to talk about this ahead of time to air out some of the questions, whether that was in an executive session or not. But as I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, I go back to just like my email said to you. I believe we're opening a can of worms here we don't want to open up. I think the optics are bad. I think the perception of other employees in the school system is it's going to be a raise. Whether it is or not, I'm not arguing, and that's not what I'm trying to argue about. I think the corporation is saying we don't have any money. All that goes into the optics. I would much rather see a recommendation come from the superintendent that would say, based on market conditions, or based on merit, or based on some tangible fact, that this pay raise needs to take place. I don't know what happened in closed doors, behind closed doors. If anyone in this system should understand a pay structure and a calculation of a pay structure, more should be the individual person that we're talking about. And I think with us approving the contract and so much time passing, I think to go back, it's just not the right thing to do. I just think if you just take a look at what's happened over the last year, with the way the whole sabbatical went sabbatical, I guess is what with the pay structure and the restructure and the employees upset. So I would even argue performance would be not perceived as a correct way to do it with our body, our viewing body. So, I'm not trying to say anything bad about the individual employee. And that's what makes this so difficult to talk about, because it's all out in the public and it's all air. I think it's unfortunate if that's true, if it's what's happened, but I think with the contracts being signed, the positions being approved, if this would have happened a month afterwards, that's a whole different story. but there's been a length of time that's passed since then. You know, it's been, I don't know, what, 18 months?
Oh, no, this goes back to her hire date.
It goes
So-
back to 13,
so-
14.
That's even, so
And
that's
when you
even
say
makes-
that she should know and understand, she was not privy to any of the information off of base, nor where anybody else was at the time,
Well,
because
see,
that's
then
an HR issue.
then that, I was thinking it just went back to the cabinet position, but that even makes it even more difficult in my eyes, because as a,
Let me
as a
correct-
board.
Let me make
as-
sure that everybody's on the same page. It was when she became, when
changed.
she was placed into the position that she is in currently.
What every administrator, I understand that there are some opportunities to take a look at different factors to adjust a salary, but every administrator that's hired sometimes has is offered, it's a subjective salary that's offered. Like, for example, when we hired you, we could have offered you anywhere from, I don't know, $100,000 to $200,000.
Well, dang, I missed out.
Well, you should have held out longer, but
Yes.
but I mean, so when we interview, you know, any of the other positions to be filled on the cabinet, it becomes kind of subjective. You know, I'm not going to say we don't have a formula that just says, for example, that this person gets paid that amount of money. We have frameworks, I understand that. We have calculations, I understand that. But I'm just based on the process,
The subjectivity, there's a very small section of the contract. I'm going to ask Jennifer to speak a little bit more to this, but of where there is this, you can have a variance there. This portion of the calculations as we go through it is for experience. There's no variation there. It is everybody else, every other administrative position, whether they're classified or non-classified, was granted every bit of their experience as they came in, with the exception of one person. So it's not about merit. That's opening a can of worms, as you mentioned. This is about, if we do nothing, it gets to the point of discrimination. That's what this is. And to not put this person where every other administrator was given their experience that they bring into the district and had in the district is absolutely wrong.
It should also be noted that the individual who we're discussing right now, this was not that person's desire to have
No.
this done. That individual has maintained a pay schedule for the last number of years that actually was to that person's detriment, as opposed to the pay scale that we have.
how do you
And
know
so-
that this person didn't want it done? You had a conversation you're not supposed to have?
I call for the question. No, that's
That's a
I
good
did
question,
not,
isn't it?
I did not speak with that person directly, but I know that that person has also not gone to the administration to ask for a change in that status. That is the administration doing their due diligence.
So hearsay, what you're saying is hearsay, this person didn't want it done.
Do you want to read me my rights?
No, I just want clarity, that's all. I just want to make sure.
I was as clear as I could.
Okay.
I understand that this person has not asked for any type of recuperation of pay that would have been and should have been given to them at the time that their change of position occurred several years ago. That the administration has done their due diligence to do the background and find out that to bring that person's pay scale up in line with experience as every other administrator that we have.
I have a different question. So for those that is particularly the newer members, how is pay determined for an administrator? Could you
Jennifer,
go through
would you
that process, please?
speak to that?
Because coming from the private sector, I know how that works, and it doesn't sound like this is that way.
No. And when you talk about, you know, the sliding scale or negotiation, there's only one small portion that is an assignment role, based on the job duties of the person. You know, at the elementary level, it could even factor in the size of the building.
Obviously, the high school is bigger than, you know, one of the little elementary schools. So that's really the only place where there is any kind of, quote, wiggle room. But at the time of placement, you know, length of service is length of service. If you have a master's degree, master's plus 30, those things are set at that time, and there's not, and you don't change within that.
Are they set by law or by the corporation?
They're not set by law.
I mean, I just wonder, I mean, for instance, you were a principal and now you're HR. I wonder how much of your experience is applicable to your job. Not to, but, you know, I think it's a valid question.
But that's not how education works. It's years of service.
It's years of service.
And because it feeds into your retirement.
So I have a follow-up question. So, for instance, if superintendents become scarce and the going rate jumps to, say, $250,000, how do we get there from where we're at now? If Todd's in a range and all of a sudden we think, I mean, how does that range get moved?
And I would say the superintendent's position
that's
is
a whole
totally
different.
different. Superintendent's position is absolutely negotiation between the candidate and the board.
Okay.
And so that's out of this. So, the other administrators within the district, though, fit within the determined factors that are in place as far as to where they're gonna go.
I've got a couple comments on that again. One, if we change the pay currently, if we were to go back to 2013-14, would there be any eligibility for retro pay on that then? Because then you're opening up yourself to a situation saying, hey, we made a mistake, this is what you should have been making, and now all of a sudden, doing the math, I mean, we're talking $30,000 of retro pay that could be subject to it.
So what I would
Now,
tell you to
well,
that-
let me make my other comment here. I don't have much voice left. If we do this, what message are we sending a teacher that has been here for 12 years, but is still year 5 on the teacher scale?
Yeah, okay, so let me address both of those, because very good points. First one is, Aaron's correct, this person did not ask for this, nor is she asking for the retro pay, which technically I think she could. And I think she can make a case that but fortunately, we're not at that point. What does it say to a teacher who's been here 5 years, 12 years, and came in at 5 and they're still at 5? It says this person is going back to where they started. We're not giving them the experience of the last 3 or 4 years in this position. This only brings them up to and corrects it to where they were when they began. So it's no different than what it is for teachers. Now, similarly, administrators and teachers are in the same boat, and that is when you come in, wherever you are with your experience, that's where you are. So in other words, each year, administrators don't get credit for experience, just like teachers don't. We, across the board, are frozen at whatever that experience is as you come in. Teacher, administrator, either way. So there would be no change to that. So if we had a teacher who came in and let's say for whatever reason there was 2 years of experience they had that at the time they didn't bring up, they didn't bring forward as a part of their experience to where they should factor in, that would be the only similarity there, would be if there was something that was missed or overlooked or they just flat out were not given it.
Right, and that's where I'm coming at, to where I brought that up. I was in that situation, and I was told flat out,
And
nothing
again,
could be done.
I can't speak to that.
Sure.
I mean, I agree with you that that's not correct, that's not right, and I wouldn't handle it that way, but I can't speak to that situation.
Should we pull that one out of the, and vote on that separately, or do you want to vote it within?
I think we should just go ahead and vote. I mean, we're cleaning up,
Okay.
and this is my opinion, we're cleaning up language on benefits.
That's an action item.
Yeah, it's an action item, but we're also, I want to see everybody on the same page, everybody treated the same. And whatever that is, that's where we need to be. And if we have to, that's why I asked the question about, do we have anyone else in this situation? because if they're there, I want theirs fixed too.
Was
And
it in the context of your review that this was discovered? Is that what happened?
Because I went through every person when we were looking at all the calculations.
So if the market force for chief financial officers increases, how do we adjust then? I mean,
It has already increased,
okay.
and I can tell you that we're getting a bargain.
Oh, the crux of this is, I mean, the personnel aside, I mean, I have no problem. I think Karen probably deserves the additional money and probably more. But I worry about
Market.
other things, market forces, setting a precedent. I mean, my issues are kind of that type of stuff.
Sure.
And so, but I would much rather, and I think I said, you know, have this raised based strictly on market and merit. But and I'm trying to find out where that fits in, because it doesn't, this isn't the private sector,
Doesn't
obviously.
fit very well.
Actually, if you look at the 200 and some page, or 200 and some line item that we just got from the ISBA for business managers, and I think they classify it business managers and financial officers or something, I forget the exact title. It ranges anywhere from like $40,000 up to $150,000 or $60,000. So, I mean, you could make the argument that we could compare it to whatever you want to compare it to. I mean, you know, even if you take a look at just urban school districts, there's still a wide range. I mean, that's why it's kind of, and again, I'm not trying to say that, and please, I hope Karen understands I'm not trying to say anything bad against her. But, you know, it kind of, that's why I think, to me, there is some subjective base to where we put some people in some of these positions, because if you want to compare it to the market, then all right, then I mean, we got quite a wide range to compare it to.
So, John, to answer your question, what happens is if we get to the point where we have to fill this position, and there's just simply no applicants, there's nobody there to fill that job, the board has the right and is the expectation to work through and set that where it would need to be in order to
Stay competitive
recruit,
and get the right person.
the right person. Now, I can tell you that that challenge is going to continue to be the case all over. You know, it's kind of like the NFL with their who has the largest contract. It's relevant to that year at that moment. And the same thing is true with, obviously not
What the
millions and
pool
millions of
looks
dollars,
like.
but what the pool is, what the challenges are that go with the district. If it's urban, if it's suburban, if it's growing, if it's declining. There's all kinds of things that factor into that as well.
What's going
So
on with the state, financing?
Yeah.
I mean,
So the bottom line is the board has the ability to adjust that as needed.
Can I ask another, and if this is an appropriate area, I want you to tell me. So if she was supposed to get this and she got something else, and we're trying to fix it, what do we do about the parts she was entitled to, she doesn't get?
Well, at this point in time, fortunately, she's not asking for that. So
Should we get
our
that in writing?
Well, our conversations with her has been, she's very appreciative for this fact. It has, as it has come to light, and it has been something that has bothered her, but not to the point where she would ask for it to be changed or corrected. The bottom line here is, in my mind, what this should signal to everyone is, again, we're trying to make it be as fair
Absolutely.
as we can to all employees,
And
regardless
I
of the
see
class.
that. I just wanted to know if we needed to do anything. I mean, if she's not asking for anything, should we get that in writing to cover
I
ourselves?
wish
Or are
Ron was
we
still here,
okay?
'cause, I think if we
I don't-
agree, we're on,
I don't know that.
we almost
Am I
have
being
back
too?
pay.
I don't know that we have the
We don't
right
need
to
to
go
do
there.
that?
I don't.
Okay.
Well, what if she says no?
Well, I'm okay with that. I just would like to see that, oh, she says no, she's not gonna sign it.
And I probably shouldn't say this out in public, but I'm telling you right now that if we vote for this, then I think she's deserving of back pay, because that would be, you know, in my opinion, the right thing to do. But I know where I'm going to vote on this. It has nothing to do with the individual, all about the situation and the fact that, in my eyes, precedence was already been set. And that's why I will vote the way I vote.
Precedence was set for.
A similar situation when something was brought up before you were here, but I was part of that situation. Huh?
You're gonna vote on based on your personal situation?
Based on what's been the policy of this corporation in the past.
Even if that's wrong.
Yeah, and
It was
it's
wrong.
being
It was.
corrected now.
I would like to see.
Why
I would
would you
like to
vote on
see.
something based on what was wrong and not when you have the ability to make it right?
Especially when they're trying to fix it.
I understand that. I don't think this is all the. I think more discussion needs to be on this. But
But if they're fixing it and making it correct, yeah, we can keep talking about this for days. Let's just vote.
Okay, Aaron called for the vote, so we have a motion and a second.
I'd like to make a motion that
It's
we
already
approve.
been
It's already been motioned and
Yeah,
second.
we
That's right,
already
I'm
have a
sorry.
motion and a second on the consent items. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And do we need to poll since we have two?
I believe so.
Okay. So we'll poll the members of the board. Jeff?
No.
John?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Aye.
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 Okay, Brad?
Aye.
Okay. So motion carries. And now we're ready for action items.
Okay, action items tonight. Our first one is 5.01 donations. Our list of donations tonight is extensive. David Brown Appraisal Services, and all these are for the Career Education Scholarship, so I'm just going to include them all together. Fig Bar Inc., DBA Jiffy Lube, and Kyle's Auto. First Bank of Richmond, Holland Colors, J.M. Hutton, Kyle Tom Real Estate, McDonald's, Natco Credit Union, Primex Plastics Corporation, Richmond Association of Realtors, Rosebud Village, and Stoltz Family Dentistry all, again, donate to the Career Ed Scholarship. We appreciate that. Tony and Elaine Michael donate to the Charles Michael Morgeson Scholarship. Terry L. Warfield and family to the Donald L. Warfield Scholarship. Gordon and Marianne Thompson and Ray Whoopi donate to the Elizabeth Thompson Memorial Scholarship. Manpower has donated to the Geneva L. Allen Manpower Richmond Memorial Scholarship. Barbara Hmeatman, James and Heather
Gina Fong.
Fanya.
Judy Spicer, Luann Spicer, Ray Wilpe, Randy Spicer, and Todd and Amy Martz all donate to the Joe Spicer Memorial Scholarship. The Kiwanis Golden K of Richmond donates to the Kiwanis Golden K of Richmond Scholarship. Jerry and Judith Ash donate to the Tim Lebo Memorial Special Education Scholarship. Barbara Short has donated to the Tom and Faye Price Memorial Scholarship. Ron and Rhonda Christopher to the Troy Christopher Scholarship. Clyde Black as a donation to the RCS Mentoring Program. Aline Giffens, an anonymous donation. Anthony and Dorothy Broadwell, Bernard and Roseanne Kalkoff, Bill and Ruth Ann Carter, Chris and Barbara Beeson, Christina Clevenger, Clarice Warwick, David and Cherie Jetmore, Dave and Ellen Johnson, David and Phyllis Marling, David Ray, Doris Ellen Miller, Elaine Barnes, Eric and Loretta Tugel, Jan Hibner, Kenneth and Melanie Bond, Kenneth and Patricia Jordan, Michael Maines and Bobby Carter, Paul and Pat Lingle, Pete and Nancy Beeman, Philip and Lyndon Dennis, Richard and Sally Harder, Richard W. Boddicker, Robert and Tony Rinke, Ron and Rhonda Christopher, and then Tim and Ellen Love all donate to the Civic Hall Performing Arts Proudly Presenting Series for a total of $11,127.50 in donations this evening.
I so move that we accept the donation.
Okay, do I hear a second? Okay, Brad seconds it. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I think, once again, we need to thank our entire community for their generosity. It's pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely. Our next action item this evening is our benefit packages. I'm going to ask Mrs. O'Brien if she would speak to this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Terrell. Tonight I come to you with a recommendation for the updating of the benefit packages. The benefit packages have been updated to include new positions and for language updating and consistency, as outlined in the board update and the attached benefit package drafts. At this time, I recommend that the board approve the benefit package updates as presented.
Okay, do you hear a motion to approve the benefit package?
I move to approve the benefits package as presented.
Okay, do you hear a second? Oh, Brad seconds it. Any comments or questions? Jeff?
I think it's important, and I don't think Jennifer said it, I think it's important to note that on her recommendation for these benefit packages, she notes that there are no changes to the benefits that are currently offered to the employees. This is strictly a cleanup, the way the information, so these are benefits and actions that are currently offered that are just not there, so.
Language is
Yeah,
just.
Not to
right.
confuse it with
Right.
trying to change the benefits and trying to do some of the alignment that we're trying to work on. It's kind of, I don't know, parallel is the right word to use, but,
Yeah, it's just basically a cleanup of language so it's easier to read for
there's
everybody.
there's a couple of things that we can discuss about these, but I'll wait until we get into the other part.
Okay. So we have any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And our last action item is 5.03, the second reading and deletion of policies. Mrs. Robinson?
Okay, we had received information. First, we have the ones that we had first reading on. And so do we have a motion to, for the second reading of deletion of these policies that are listed?
Basically, we're moving to go
We're
forward
moving.
with the
Yeah,
deletion,
with-
right?
Yeah, the second,
So I
okay.
move that we delete these policies.
Okay.
On second reading.
On second
On,
reading.
on second reading, okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, Aaron seconds it. Any comments or questions?
It's important, I think, to remind ourselves that these were the ones that were recommended because they were covered by law, out of date, inaccurate, or not necessary.
Right. All right, any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we need to move to the discussion of the selected policies. And Ron Cross sent everybody information on those.
When did he send it?
This about 2 days ago.
I've never received anything from Ron Cross. So.
He sent it to,
Well, I don't doubt
Okay.
that. I'm just letting you know, I did
Okay.
not receive anything, so.
Does it have the distribution list?
Basically said, you recommend deletion of one, the rest, if we decided to keep them, he saw no problem. I think was.
there was only 2 that he felt strongly should be deleted.
And
Here,
One could
Can-
be,
did you give him a
Yes,
copy?
the student discipline,
It's 1543 and 5600, yeah, student discipline.
so you thought 1543 should be deleted?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, I
And
wish I knew these.
It was Tuesday, Jeff, just in case you go back to look, it was on Tuesday.
And we have a
10,
new
12.
policy that has come on student discipline too.
1543. Well, I don't know, I don't think I brought mine. Let me look it up here.
You want me to forward it to you so it's right now?
I'm on the policy thing on Budman, or on the,
He's looking up the policy.
Oh, you're not looking up your email?
Yeah, which is odd because,
You're on the distribution list at the top.
I wonder if it got, oh, that'd be weird. You get stuff from him before.
yeah, I've gotten stuff. Let's say 1543. And 1543 should be deleted. He just strongly recommends deletion. Does he say why?
He says, "My concern is that our policy, if not kept current, could vest the administrator with rights in addition to those required by law and create additional procedural burdens for the corporation to have to follow."
See, the bad thing about this is, here, I understand what he's saying, but this is one that is really important for board members to have access to and understand, in my opinion. Although the non-administrative contracts will come, renewal or non-renewal will come from the recommendation of the superintendent, I understand that. But this, I've referred to this one many times when we talk about, because the first paragraph I find really important. Because it gives me, as a board member, knowing that if that administrative contract is not being discussed at a level by February 1st or by March 1st, then it automatically renews for a year. So it signals me as a board member that if I've got a question or a concern, that I could go into Todd's office and say, I don't know. I know this is your choice and your decision, but, the deadline information is important. So
So what might be more important or more valuable for all board members would be if annually, Rod would write up his interpretation of the current state statute with that information, so you had that information in front of you, rather than it being a board policy where if it's not updated at the right time, which is Ron's concern and Julie's concern, because then not only then would administrators have the state statute to fall back on, then they also have board policy to fall back on.
well,
This is another thing we have to watch and keep current with law too.
yeah,
That'd be
I mean,
concern.
this is where I'm having the trouble reconciling, because I'm trying, and Ron even said this, information, what's required,
The problem is if it were not kept up and gave them more privileges, then we'd be on the hook for those, because it's board policy. So the state statute would give us them. Now, board policy couldn't trump it, state
Right.
statute to make it
But
less,
But it could go the other
but
way.
it could give them more, and that's why Ron and Julie both agree that it should be deleted.
Since the statute's clear, that's their issue,
Correct.
right?
Can you delete everything after the first paragraph and have just to have that?
So then we're going against the advice of both attorneys, field of expertise.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we didn't ask Ron if we can change it. We just,
Well, they both strongly suggest.
Yeah, they did both strongly suggest we deleted it on that
I don't
one.
know, it wasn't my section, so
Clean the
He's
fifth.
out of it. I think and what'd you say about Ron giving us a reminder?
He could annually give us his interpretation of the current state statute,
Regarding the timing and the
Right.
deadlines and that sort of thing.
especially, like the practice we could just establish is 2 months before, a month before that timeline comes to pass, that all of you receive that from him, so that way you know where we are with it.
That's my
Well-
whole concern about all of it is exactly Ron's point on all of them. Anywhere where we would have to be responsible for retaining coordination with the state, that I get concerned about that, because I know how far we got in the hole with keeping up on policies as it has been. And while our plan is obviously not to get in that situation again, we all know how quickly that can happen and how much work it is. And so I I understand why, where there is statute that covers it quite clearly, I understand why they're being adamant about that.
Well, I'm having a difficult time in reconciling it. I mean, if the will of the board is to delete it, then so be it. There needs to be some balance between state statute and, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I know, honestly, I've referred to this policy probably 10 times myself over the 10 years I've been on the board. So, if we, I'll just have to remember to search state statute. I mean, state statute's gonna change things every year, so.
Well,
Which is, again, part of their argument, is that it changes things every year, and then we have to run around making sure our policy.
We got more today.
Oh, we're not, I know, we're not even close, that's the thing.
Well, the whole, I mean, system-wise, we have, I mean, doing the research, I mean, even online, our online handbooks are out of date. I mean, we approve a handbook for each elementary school, which we've got to get, I mean, we have just created this mound of system stuff that we can't seem to get a grasp on, to keep everything current, up to date, and it's.
I guess that's my argument for not worrying, if statute takes care of it, then don't create another one for us to have to watch out for.
Absolutely, that is a concern.
Well, I'm not gonna fight it. I'm just being honest with you.
Well, and maybe when we get back, I mean, because we got to keep moving forward on all of this, and then at the point when we get to that point again, maybe that would be the time to bring it back up, and maybe there's another way to do that for you that would give you that comfort level.
Well, it's just not me though. I would think if you guys had the question, I mean, where would you go to look for it now?
State statute. And if I can't find it, I
You can
call
always
Ron.
call. You can always call. We can get it for you.
Call Ron at the ISBA is where I would call.
I mean, realistically, that's our responsibility to get that information to you. And if you
Right,
call,
and I
you email me and let me know, we'll
Then
get
you
that
would get it.
information to you. So you don't have to go look in state statute.
Right.
And I was looking, because ISBA has to keep you aware too. So what's your pleasure? The others, he said he didn't see any downside in keeping them in place if you wanted them
There are
there.
actually two then that he said he would
Two.
delete.
Yes, two. Is 1543 and 5600.
I mean, in what I reviewed, I would still advocate for 2464, the high ability keep, and the tobacco, the 7434. I can concede the others if that's the will of the board, but I would still like to see those two in the policy book.
And then obviously we need to make a note if we decide to retain 7434. He had some language concerns that we should make a note of, because that means that's an edit that we may want to make. I don't know that this is the appropriate time for that.
If you
but-
start going through them, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I think that could be caught up in the normal process. Is kind of how I read the.
When you review.
Yeah,
When you
that's
do,
what I thought too.
when you do a regular review, not this cleanup. Stuff we're
Like I
doing
say, I
out
would, in those two, I would still like to see on the books.
What was your other one, John, beside 2464?
7434.
Well, and then 8400 too, if I read that correctly, it is addressed. He said he doesn't see this downside to it, but he
Right.
does say it's clearly addressed, so I don't know.
Well, basically, all the rest, he didn't see any downside in keeping them in there. Wasn't a problem. It was just those two.
Well, I'm at a disadvantage, like I said.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing the document, so.
So do you want to pull that one out, the 1543, and just review it next time.
Well, just go ahead and go with Ron's recommendations or what you guys want, and then if there's something that I'm just dead set against, I'll bring it back when we add them.
Okay. So do you want to delete just the 2?
Why would we have Ron go through all that trouble and do all that and then turn around and question the
Well,
fact
this
that he's
is-
put the research in? It doesn't
We've
make
already
sense.
questioned these.
I'm
Questioned
saying
the
it
original
doesn't-
work, so
Or do you want to delete?
I think we should go with Ron's recommendation and let's move forward instead of moving backwards all the time.
well, but unfortunately, Ron's recommendation
So he only
on
recommends
2 of
deleting
them was deletion. The other 2, he said, well, and other than smoking.
Well, what did
Of the
Linda, is
others,
her
he
name
said
Linda? What
he
did she
sees no
recommend?
downside to
Julie?
deleting them, but he doesn't, only one he said he didn't understand why it was listed was the tobacco one. Am I right?
And the tobacco is actually a good example of something that we do that adds to state statute.
So, and I don't know, we're in discussion mode, right, about this topic. So my thoughts were, we followed Julie's recommendation, unless there's some strong reason not to. And in that case, there are only 2 that I've heard anyone say have strong feelings about
Liability and
smoking.
smoking. Okay.
Am I right about that? So,
Yes.
I guess,
That's what
Okay.
I've heard.
and what I'm hearing is delete them all except for holding those 2 and following the recommendations of the people who we asked to do that work, basically.
Hey, are you going to make that a motion?
Is that, are we there? I'm there. Okay, great. So I move that we go forward deleting the policies included with the exception of
2464.
2464 and 7434.
Okay.
2464, 2734.
7434 is the second one.
I'll second that.
Okay, Brad seconds it.
Not delete.
All right. Any
And
others?
So the other 10, I'm sorry, 'cause since I don't have the sheet,
Yes,
the other
10 will be
10,
deleted.
or
As-
other 8.
Right, as per the recommendation
Let him have mine. I
from the
did not.
ISBA.
Can I just say something else? We're supposed to take our time and go over this information prior to coming to these meetings. So when we prolong doing something that has already been recommended, I have a problem with, it's our job and it's our responsibility as board members to make sure we have questions. We send them to either to Dixie or to Todd or to whomever to get these questions answered, okay? So I have a problem with pulling 2 pieces out because you want more discussion on it, when you should have had this discussion prior to the board meeting.
No, and we're not even actually talking about more discussion. We're talking about pulling them out and leaving them there and not actually taking that recommendation.
When it's been recommended to take them out.
Correct.
So why do we take the time of,
Our smoking, the smoking policy is, our smoking policy is a little bit more than state statute.
so we're leaving it in there because of that purpose?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and Brad seconded. Any other comments or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And now we're ready for board reports and old business, which is,
Wait a minute.
What we just did.
What we just did.
Weren't you also going to go over this?
yeah, I'm
Oh,
looking
that's
at.
the next part. I gotcha.
At the next part, board reports and
was
old
part of
business,
action
which is
item. Oh, okay.
discussion of selected policies. Now, when we went through them this week, when we were all doing our homework, we found a lot of sections or a lot of pieces where she said there was a revised policy, but we didn't have a revised policy on that list. So now we have, and I just got them yesterday, we have all the revised policies now that I will be more than happy to send to you tomorrow, and put them where they're supposed to be, which policy is the new one, so that you'll have a chance to look at it, and then you can do a more comprehensive review of your sections. There's 3 sections. The zeros, the 1000s, and the 9000s, which I found needed no replacement policies except for, Jeff, was it 1543?
It was
The
1543
background
and
check.
15 and 1520, wasn't it? So it was 1543 and 1520 in the 1000s.
I'm not sure how I ended up where I was, to be honest.
Anyway, those 3 sections is just basically cleanup without replacement. So I didn't know if you would want to move to first reading at least those 3 sections. That's a question. All the others are going to need
Who
some
reviewed those sections?
zeros, 1000s, and 9000s.
But, I mean, whoever reviewed them, I mean, I have to go with whoever reviewed them, recommendations, I guess.
I did. I have a questions about 1000s,
Okay,
but did you just want to go zeros then 1?
we could, okay.
I'm trying to help, not.
I know, I know. All the others I know are gonna need work. I mean, we couldn't possibly bring them up tonight because they still need work. So we'll just go through them right now.
Well, because I think it's important that we're going through this, this is considered first reading for this, correct?
Well, and I think I'm with you, Dixie. Really, what we got to talk about tonight probably should be only and maybe there's a question
Well,
about
that's
the
what-
thousands. Only the 3 sections where there seem to be no other work necessary.
Because we've not seen the revised
Policy.
policy.
That's what I'm saying, as we go through this, I mean, if we
Or all of them, we've
check
seen
these
some.
off, then those could go ahead and go to
Right.
second reading, but if we don't check each individual off, then
Yeah.
it needs to stay back.
The rest of them, there's no way we could because we
Right.
just got the replacement
and-
policies for them yesterday.
In the interest of, I guess, time, if you will. And since it seems like those 3 sections are the only 3 that we can actually have that conversation with, should we just focus on those 3 this evening?
We
Or,
could.
well, you said you have an issue in thousands.
Well, I mean, John put me to shame with the way he compiled his list. I kind of, went through them online and made my notes, but I could see this. I could see if we covered each of these sections, I could see probably dwindling this list down to half anyway, to go to second reading. Because, like, for example, on the section that I reviewed, all of the thousands I'm okay with except for 2. So then everything else, as far as I'm concerned, could go through to second reading. And then instead of us looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're automatically down to 2. And after a 5-second discussion, we could probably be down to 1. So that's what I'm kind of trying to understand. I'm just trying to understand the process, so I do it right.
I had a bunch that were okay to delete because they were recommended to delete and okay with revisions and that are good to go. And so those could move forward if no one else has any complaints. But then I had a couple pages of,
Replacements?
well, most of our replacements, but there were a couple I had specific questions on, like 1 or 2. that we could maybe, I don't know if we want to talk.
I think we're talking the same thing.
Yeah.
So would it be best
More
for us
just-
just to work through a couple sections tonight then? Is that what you're thinking?
That was what I was thinking, so just those three that don't need a lot of work. Because 3 and 4, whoever's working on 3 and 4 really needs to meet with Jennifer because that's personnel. She recommended combining 3 and 4 because there's so many policies that are, what's my word?
Related.
Overlapping, yeah. So, I think the group that's working on those need to meet with Jennifer since she is in personnel, deals with it every day, to have her help combine those, if that would work. Because that's the big, I see that as the most work right there. And I don't think we're ready to bring it to
Okay,
the
I'm good with going through just zeros, 1,000s, and 9,000s.
Okay. And the 8,000s, there was tons of replacement policies
Yep.
that weren't there, and now we have them, so I think people need an opportunity to at least look at them.
But if you go to the 6,000s, there's a whole section of 20 policies or 15 policies that I didn't have any. I mean, I know there's 2 other people in the 6,000s and 6,000s and 7,000s. I know that, but there's a whole group there that we can eliminate as far as I'm concerned. So, but we'll just do the 0, 1s, and 9s. I'll follow your lead, Dixie.
Well, I'm only suggesting that because there were no replacement policies that people have, haven't had a chance to look at.
Okay.
Good call.
So, do you want to move
Started.
to first reading with those 3?
So no questions on zeros. I got a couple questions on.
The
So I move
thousands?
first, the zeros to first reading right now and get them out of the way.
Okay,
Let's do it.
okay. Do I hear a motion for first reading on the zeros
I move we move the zero policies
to the second reading?
second reading for
Okay.
deletion, or for revision,
I will second that.
Okay.
as
Any other-
noted.
Any other comments or discussions on the zeros? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we'll move to 1,000s.
And I have 2 questions and a commentary, I guess, again. As I was reading through some of the later policies, and I can't remember now if it was 6,000, 7,000, or both, but there were some references in the comment sections that Julie said, paragraph on page 3, and when I'm looking at this online, which is our only access to policies, because I hope when we're done with this that we can actually have a separate file and have a policy. I'm not exactly sure what paragraph she was talking about. So, delete the second paragraph on page 1. I'm assuming she's talking about whenever this is 1220. Whenever the position of a superintendent of schools becomes vacant, the board will appoint a superintendent and fix his or her salary or term of employment, which will be no less than 3 years. I'm making the assumption, I guess, that that's actually kind of law. If we hire a superintendent, we have to give him an initial contract for 3 years.
That's correct.
So I don't know how it's contrary to law. But again, that's covered by statute, so I could argue that we could take, if that's the paragraph that she's talking about. So that's as far as, she had other references to do on 1220, and I'm okay with those, but, so I guess we just delete the second paragraph on page 1 then. And then we can't do 1521 because it has a replacement policy.
And 1521 is the,
I have to look here.
isn't that the,
Personal background check.
yeah, we just got that this week. So I will be I'll give that to you tomorrow. So we do have one.
So that one gets pulled out. And are you gonna recommend?
So then I guess I'm okay then if I guess I was just interested why that was contrary to law. That was my question.
Thinking it's the same, it's the same thing.
I mean, but I'm fine with deleting it, so then I'm okay with moving all the 1000s except for 1521 to second reading. I'll make that motion.
Okay.
And I'll second it.
Any other comments or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So we had Dixie and Debbie on that one as well.
Okay.
What was the motion?
To move,
Moving 1130 through 1460. Those modifications. You
Get
want
it?
to write down the individual policy numbers you got?
No, I'm good.
it's the 1000s we're moving to a second reading.
All the 1000s with the exception of 1521, we're moving to a second reading.
Mhm.
Okay, got it.
Because we have a replacement policy coming up for that.
Okay.
Okay. The 2000s, 3000s, 4000s, 5000s, 6000s, 7000s, and 8000s have lots of replacement policies. They need a little bit more work with the committees after I send you the rest of the replacement policies tomorrow. So we're going to leave them be and continue to work on them. And the 9000s needed just minor stuff. So, where are you on the 9000s?
I think we have all the 2000 policies, I thought.
Do we?
I think so. I could be wrong.
That was John and Aaron, that wasn't my section.
Well, 2340 and 2341 needed to be combined with language.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how we combine them, I guess that brings up,
Yeah, the committee's gonna have to sit down and
okay.
Yeah.
do that. And also, they need to make a recommendation on 2273. So you're gonna have to
Well,
look at
on
that one.
The 2341, the one they asked to combine, I actually thought that could be deleted, I guess. I don't. So, rather than combined. I thought it was, so I guess that's why I didn't have a further issue with it, maybe. But I can't tell you why.
Well, look at it again and.
All right.
And we'll go from there. We're on 9000s right now. So,
I recommend we move the 9000s to second reading.
do I hear a second? Any other comments or discussions on 9000s? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Well, that feels a little
That's some
productive.
significant progress.
Yeah, that's productive, right?
It is.
All right, there you go.
I did have another question, though.
Okay.
Just in the 8000s, basically all the transportation policies, who actually does that? I mean, is that, I would think that, I mean, who completes that? I mean, is that
Task?
board? Yes. I mean, is that physically done by the board, or is that?
The board sets the policies. He enacts the policies.
Okay. I mean, it's fine. I'm trying to kind of understand. So, I mean, it was 3 policies to combine in one, and there's a lot. I mean, that'll take some time to do that one.
So of the actual combining of those, that will be whoever's assigned to the 9,000, to whatever section those policies are in, to get together
Yeah.
and talk through what the recommendation they bring back to the board is.
Well,
So at some point in time, those who are assigned
is
are
that
going
the
to have
color
to get
code
together.
system that we did? I started doing it, just got too, but where we make our changes in red.
Yes. So what'll happen with those, Julie has given her recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you guys want to have something different beyond that, that's where you put in the different color.
But like on that, like nothing, I mean, obviously Kim couldn't combine the policies, so that we have to kind of almost start.
Right.
That's your
Basically,
job.
I think it's you and I.
Okay.
We would be making recommendations to the rest of the crew
Piece of
saying, hey,
cake.
we reviewed this and we're
And-
thinking it ought to go this
And
way.
I want to say again, you guys have to remember that originally, when Kelly was on the board and Jeff, they were the policy committee.
Didn't do a very good job, did
It's too much for two people.
It's
That's
too
the
much,
problem.
and we all agreed. I mean, they were doing the review for everything.
45 windows
And
open
it's
on that.
overwhelming. You guys are beginning to realize just with the sections you have, how overwhelming it is. And that's why we agreed to divvy it up so that we're all doing some of it to kind of help the cause, because they were like on total overload. Trying to keep them up to date.
If we have a section that I know we're reviewing and we're gonna start adding policy, actually. I mean, now that's actually the next step, because I mean, you know, so at any given time, that when we hit the sections, if I would like to suggest that we add a policy that's new, what process where in this process do you want me to recommend that?
Personally, I think we need to get all this done first so that we kind of know where we are, and add all this is the stack.
Well, I'm saying,
However, when you get to it, though, that
but if
needs to be
when we're
noted at
starting
some
doing-
point.
if we're
yeah.
starting to do that stack now and add them, then would that be the time when we get into that
But they're
section?
just replacement policies. They're not like, you're talking about brand new.
Brand new.
I think once we get to the point where the board wants to consider adding any policies, that it would behoove us to run those through Ron and Julie, so that we don't get back in the situation where we have a bunch of unnecessary, because she's
Right.
given us the list of the policies that we must have. So anything beyond that then becomes,
But there needs to be a discussion that the board agrees that policy
Right.
needs to be
Right.
forwarded. I
Right.
wouldn't want to arbitrarily go to them and say.
absolutely,
Absolutely.
right.
And two, in your committee work, when we get to some of the replacement policies, you have to read through them and you have to make a choice, because she'll give you sample 1 and sample 2, and you have to figure out what you feel is best to recommend for the corporation.
So it sounds like what we're saying is we're kind of finish working through this exercise. But as you're doing a review, and you say, oh, you know what, the replacement, and it seems like there's still something missing, that probably needs to at least come forward in note form at some point, so that when we get finished with this exercise, we can go back to those. Don't you think?
That's fine,
That's kind of what I'm hearing.
I'm not trying to muddy the water,
No, I think it's
I-
important point.
I got a couple of policies that I would like for us to consider, and
Yeah, I would not want to hold off new policies till this is done, though. I think they should be brought up as
as this section is being reviewed.
Okay.
well, whenever it's appropriate. I mean, if we need a policy on parking, and
I'm not sure that's a policy.
I know, but
He pulled that one
That's
out
just
of the
my
air.
point. That's just
small car, but you know, if
I saw
there's
a
some
car.
issue, then I think we need not wait till, 18 months from now when we're done with this process.
Yeah.
I get what you're
Well,
saying.
and the
That
thing
makes
of it
sense,
is, we're trying to go like section by section by section to keep it easy, because it's just totally overwhelming. I mean, there's just a lot.
What's the cleanup
to
and then
this.
the review? They're kind of
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then once we get it all done, because since I've been going through them, I've seen wording, just like Ron found, that I'm raising my eyebrow and thinking,
embarrassing.
what?
Mm-hmm.
So,
We have an English teacher somewhere that proves some of this.
anyway. Okay,
Dr. Borf was on all the committees with us.
Yeah, I'm not sure we got all of them when he was here either.
all right, so we're finished with board reports and old business. Anything else? Okay,
June 6th.
it's time for second public commentary. None? All right. Preview of upcoming meeting and events.
With upcoming events, obviously with summer, things have slowed down quite a bit, but there's still a lot going on with our students, and Bridget continues to send out different dates of events that are going on. Band season's kicking off. Sports are all involved in things, so just as you pay attention to that and get an opportunity to see our kids during the summer as well.
All right, press conference. Questions? None?
Aaron has something. How about that?
Oh, did you?
Before your bell rings.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
That's
forgot.
quite all right.
Go ahead.
On behalf of the board, we would like to extend our condolences to the family of Phil Stafford. Phil was a longtime educator here in Richmond Community Schools and had served for over 35 years as the principal at Garrison Elementary School before he retired. He didn't stop teaching after that. He became highly involved with historical education in Wayne County after that and continued to work with kids for the longest time. And just recently he passed away. He spent a lot of time after graduating from Richmond High School, coming back to Richmond, serving as a teacher and principal here in our community schools, and affecting in a positive nature a lot of students, families, and especially teachers during that time. And he continued to do so after leaving RCS. So we offer our condolences to his family and support, and you know, again, support for all his family and friends who are mourning his loss.
He was so much loved principal.
Yes.
Okay. With that said, we'll adjourn the meeting.